you're going to find when you first start bringing up one of these desires, we're talking about cross-dressing now, but this literally applies to any of them, is if it's not something that they're immediately ready to jump at, they may have indifference to it, and then you might have to work out like, okay, how do we make this exciting and fun for you? Or they may have, this is a limit for me, or it's a soft limit, and you work with, okay, help me understand that. What is it about this that makes it a limit for you?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Soul Kink Therapy. My name is Emily Letts. I am a therapeutic dominatrix based in Boulder, Colorado. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming Brandon the Dom on the show. Brandon is a sex and relationship coach based in Austin, focusing on dominant and submissive power exchange dynamics. I met Brandon as he reached out to me from we kind of peeked at each other's YouTube videos, and Brandon's YouTube is stacked, yo. I mean, just like video after video after video of such beautiful educational content, which we will talk about later. But in the meantime, welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thank you, Emily. It's great to be on the show, and it was great to connect with you. I think we have some similar philosophies and whatnot, so it was good to reach out.
Yeah, it was really beautiful to come together and solidify our love for kink and
Mm,
BDSM as a profound healing tool. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you today about is one of the things that a lot of folks who listen to this podcast are heavily skewed towards the cross dressers. And one of the things I want to talk to you about today is how to build a strong polarity,
mm.
or how to build a strong DS dynamic when one of the partners is a cross-dresser. I thought you would be the perfect person to talk about this with, because folks struggle.
Yeah, yeah. I think, particularly for your community, they are already messing with polarity, right? Because they're
Yeah.
messing with the polarity within themselves,
Maybe we
especially
should
if,
back up. Would you mind sharing what's your definition of polarity?
oh, sure. So, polarity for me is when you and your partner are creating a tension between one another.
Mm.
And that tension oftentimes is seen as a bad thing, right? We have these differences
Mm.
between each other. We have these disagreements. We have these maybe different views or values. And we are not able to bring those together so that it makes something better than the two parts on their own.
Hmm.
The world that we mess around in the dominance and submission world, is where we're taking these seemingly polar opposites and being able to use the strengths of both of those in order to create a dynamic that's better than the parts.
Hmm.
Um, and I see this happen in relationships more broadly. So, another realm that we share is the Tantra realm, or
Mhm.
sacred sexuality, as some people might hear it referred to as. And in that realm, they mess with masculine and feminine. And it's really these culmination of attributes that they're calling the masculine, and a culmination of attributes that they're calling the feminine.
Mhm.
And what we try and learn is, how do we embody one of those poles and then support the other pole, so that it's kind of this like feedback loop between each other, and grow something, again, much stronger than either one could do on their own.
Hmm. That's beautiful. I love that you started with the tension that can happen when we're at opposite ends. That's a negative tension,
Hmm.
right? Which I always think of like adults going back into their child consciousness, right?
Hmm.
Of reverting back. So then they're fighting about something that's not actually the thing they're fighting about. Is that what you're talking about?
Sort of. So, like, a great example is that people will understand is politics, right? We have two different sides, and they often value two very different things, or at least it seems that way on the surface.
Mm.
A lot of times, where there's like an underlying need or something that they're trying to fulfill. Like, at the end of the day, we all want to be thriving and living well and so on and so forth. We just don't always agree about how that's done. And so the two sides kind of battle it like, okay, we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it that way.
Yeah. To create like a
But,
war.
right.
Got
But
it.
if they're able to work together, they often create something again better than that they could have done on their own because we have to collaborate with each other.
Hmm.
Now, if we bring this back down to the
That's
level of
beautiful. I love that. Okay.
if we bring this back down to the level of relationships, all of us are just trying to get our needs met at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? We often have disagreements about how those needs might get met, or as you were starting to allude to, we have different conditioning about how we would go about getting those needs met.
Hmm.
And so we play out certain roles in order to try and get those met. But what you often find in relationships is that polarity doesn't have to be a negative thing. And it's often the thing that we're deeply attracted to,
Hmm.
this polar opposite, it seems like. And there's some psychological principles about why that might be. A lot of times we're projecting something that's a quality that we often want or a value that we like,
Mm.
um, that we want to accept in ourselves, but we see it in someone else. And so it
Yes.
becomes very attractive.
Oh, I really appreciate you bringing that up. That's something that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. That it's like, oh, I will be this kind of person if I'm with this.
Right.
It's like oftentimes it's less about the person. Oftentimes it's less about the person in front of you, but how that person makes you feel or how that person makes you see yourself.
So I'll use like a example from myself. A lot of times I will match really well with women that are very playful or, a little bit spontaneous, maybe even a little silly. And it's because I am often balancing out my own like serious discipline and going through the world in a very like masculine, heavy forward direction. And these women help me slow down, remind me that I don't have to take it so seriously, to remind me to
Chill,
play.
bro.
Yeah,
Chill. Got
exactly.
it.
And if I do enough self reflection, it's because I'm, the one whipping the crack on myself, basically drive, drive, drive. If I were able to slow down and accept my own part of myself that wants to play or not take things so seriously, um, one, I would be able to accept myself more.
Uh,
But two, I recognize the polarity thing, but it's something that I'm attracted to, but it's also something that could annoy me, right? Because I'm not accepting it in myself. So the
mm.
same quality
Oh,
that
I
I'm
love
attracted
that.
to
Yeah.
could be something I'm like, this is, getting a little rough. And it's this constant like self reflection of like, oh, this is actually a part of you that you're trying to accept, but you won't yet.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, my partner is, we often talk about it in terms of Ayurvedic doshas. Are you familiar with
Mhm.
Ayurvedic doshas?
Not as familiar, but
To give listeners just a quick little summary of this, Ayurvedic medicine is like the most ancient medicine. It comes from India, but it's this idea that there are three types of people. There's Kapha, Vata, and Pitta, which is Kaphas are earth, Vatas are air, Pittas are fire. So you can walk down the
mm,
street and basically that person's a Kapha, that person's a Pitta, that person. I am Vata, which means that I am airy. Like I move fast, I think fast. I'm like think about air, like a feather on a wind. And because of that, I can often feel deeply ungrounded.
mm,
But this is also it's like this is how my digestion works. There's all of these different health and body signals which is like yeah, this woman is a Vata, like my digestion is prone to like constipation, all of these different things. But then my partner is a kapha. So I call him like a mossy rock. You know what I mean? He is
mm,
just grounded. He's disciplined. He's like you, like he's disciplined. He gets shit done, like all these things. And so we're constantly. What's really interesting is that when we switch in dominant submissive, so when we go into dominant dynamic where I'm dominating him, what he needs more than anything else, because he's kapha, which are prone to dysregulated kaphas are prone to depression and laziness,
mm,
right?
mm,
So what he needs for me to dom him is activation. So like
mm,
I don't have to give him much containment or much like much like warm up or anything like that. I have to just go straight, like take the nipple, give it a big twist, and like he's
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean? So like what he needs is like, like a kick in sensitive areas here and there, and I don't have to do much else because he just needs that activation. Whereas for me, I'm a Vata, so what I need more than anything is containment. I need
Mm,
at when he doms me, like, he has to do quite a lot of work to get my mind to settle the fuck down, right? So
yeah.
he's, like, telling me when to breathe. He's also this is why humiliation is so I'm obsessed with humiliation for myself because humiliation, it is the most effective mind control I've ever experienced. It just, like, cleans out my mind so effectively because I'm reaching into my own, like, emotional baggage for my own,
Mm,
like, tendrils of shame so that which already have such a whole we all have them, are rooted within me so I can go into that and then start to move down into a more submissive, grounded place.
mhm.
So just yeah. So very much so. It's like that constant balancing and also recognizing that not everyone needs the same thing is what I'm
Right.
hearing.
And yes. And I think, part of the thing that you had mentioned when doing this podcast is thinking about your community and the crossdresser community and
Mhm.
how they might build these dynamics, maybe how they might switch roles, because somebody that's cross-dressing is probably leaning more towards that feminine side. But what you just described are two people that are able to create a container for whatever the other person needs. And that
Mhm.
needs not the same. For you, you needed something more grounding. For him, he needed something more activating.
Right.
Um, the process of setting up a container for the other person can be a dominant role. So the dominant one, is leading the experience, creating the situation. And if they're creating a container for someone else, um, they have to understand who that person is and how they need to be regulated, how they need to be shifted so that they're able
Yes.
to experience themselves fully and let go.
The
Um,
submissive. The person who's being led.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think that's important to state because a lot of times there's a myth or a predilection about like what a dominant's supposed to look like or what a dominant is
Oh,
supposed
yes.
to do. But a dominant submissive relationship is really about the two people in that relationship fully understanding one another and like what each other needs. And then the dom taking the lead for that.
Yeah.
So there's dominance that won't look anything like your Christian Grey, 50 Shades of Grey, like stoic, whatever. They're very vibrant and active and wearing, tons of beautiful colors and
Mhm.
being very energizing because that's what that other person
Yeah,
needs
I
within
love
that
that.
dynamic.
I think that's so important because when speaking to here's the thing with cross-dressers, right, is that they're often, like, very, um, regular men. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Their fathers, their brothers, their bosses, their colleagues. They you would just be like, "That's a what" my community is like a very woo-woo community, so we might call them normie. Like, they're just
Mm,
like normal guys. And then which is why like, the altering of that masculinity is so taboo and also so erotic for them. But the thing is, if they're gonna alter that, then they need a counterpart, which is generally, like,
right.
their wives who are also pretty mainstream. You know what I mean? And who have not been exposed to the profound pleasure of being a dom. And so
Mm,
I also often hear is like, how do I get my wife to want to dom me?
mm.
When maybe our normal dynamic is always I'm in the lead, I'm the provider, I'm the father, blah blah blah.
A lot of times these dynamics, they're opposites of your regular day life.
Right?
And that's kind of what makes it fun and
Awesome.
exciting and taboo. Yeah.
Uh,
It's like, for somebody that's has um, rules and responsibilities and everything else going on in their regular day life, being able to submit and let go of all that and hand somebody over the control is a lot of fun. They're like, this feels great.
yeah.
On the flip side of that, somebody that maybe doesn't have control or responsibility all the time, being able to step into that and be like, oh, holy shit, I have some power here, in this uh, dynamic, in this experience. So that's kind of like, if you can point out the benefits to each person of
Mhm.
like, this is what you're going to experience, that kind of helps
Hmm.
tip, like, okay, I might be interested in this.
Mhm.
But two is, if we go back to this polarity thing, you're kind of shifting the poles,
Yeah.
and we don't often experience those other poles. And what happens there is a deep understanding of the other side, like a more empathetic
Mm.
understanding of what the other person goes through.
Uh-huh.
And in part of, at least when I embody, the dominant role and setting that container, I'm trying to allow the submissive to show up however they want to show up.
Mhm.
Like, part of what I'm trying to do is accept that person for who they are
Yeah.
and how they're showing up. And for somebody in the cross dressing community, I would imagine that that would be deeply healing to be felt
Mm.
in that way, to be seen in that way.
Yeah.
So if you can express that to your wife as well, like, hey, you're not only just, bossing me around,
Mhm.
you're creating this container where I can be accepted and seen. You can understand me deeper.
Yeah.
And likewise, I can understand your role more too when I'm, normally leading the family or leading, our lives, what it's like for you to feel, somebody taking that lead.
Yeah. I love that. I also I have a lot of empathy for the wives in this context
Mm,
because my guess is that a lot of the wives and the partners are like, "Bitch, I'm in control all the time." You know what I mean? Like, I
yeah.
don't like my like, I I rarely get to feel like the pretty one, and now
Hmm.
you get dressed up, and you are dressed to the nines in ways that I've never felt comfortable being dressed to the nines, wearing that lingerie, blah, blah, blah. Like, being a woman is actually a lot more challenging than just putting on some heat, you know what I mean? Like, all of these
Yeah.
different things, and also it's like, and we have kids, and, like, I still have to be a parent and all these things, and, like, our sex life isn't that great in the first place, so now
Hmm.
you wanna take away the one thing, like, la, 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 like, there's a lot there. I can only imagine there's mm, mm, it's rooted in misunderstanding, but also
Yes.
a lot of pain that could be brought up by
Yes.
the exposure of this desire.
There's something beautiful in being the person that kind of be's vulnerable first in accepting their
Mm.
desires. So this is also a part
Mm.
of, at least what I again try and embody in dominance, is leading, going first, right? And stating, this is my desires. I want X. And what it does is it gives the other person permission to say, wow, they are embodying something that's probably pretty scary right now. They are saying
Mm.
something that everyone else is going to shame. It's going to give the other person permission. You know what? Maybe I can be a little vulnerable and show up here too.
Yeah.
And when those two people are allowed to do that, sure, that woman may have some desire. Like, I want to be the one that isn't having all the rules and want to be this beautiful embodience of the feminine. Uh, you can give her permission too. And you guys can
Mm.
work through those needs and that balance of like, how often do we do this? How much do you embody? How much do I embody? When do we embody? When do we switch?
Yeah.
Whatever works for your dynamic.
Yeah. That's what I talk to a lot of cross-dressers about is, like, this exposing, because it is so exposing this vulnerable desire, like, allow it to uproot the filth in
Yes.
your relationship. Because if you really want the sacred, profound nature of, like, of good kink with a partner, with a beloved, like, you have to put a pool filter in your pool friend first, Like, you gotta filter that shit out. And like, the idea that I've had some, I've been lucky enough to have a few female partners, of crossdressers on this
Mhm.
podcast, which has just been so profound I'm obsessed and in love with them. But it's just like, just because you share this vulnerable thing with your wife doesn't mean she's immediately gonna be like, "Well, here's a maid dress and, like, bend over, I'm
Right.
gonna peg you," which is one of my favorite quotes. But, like, yeah, I love that this idea of, like, if you bring this desire, I'll expect to hold whatever she is going to feel
Yes.
from this bringing, and then expect to work to meet her needs first.
Yes. I mean, the reason that I love dominant submissive relationships, just BDSM in general, is like the communication frameworks that underlie this, right? We're sitting down and we're saying, here's my needs, desires, boundaries, and limits.
Yeah.
What is yours? And now how do we make something out of that?
Right.
And you're going to find when you first start bringing up one of these desires, we're talking about cross dressing now, but this literally applies to any of them, is if it's not something that they're immediately ready to jump at, um, they may have indifference to it. And then you might have to work out, like, okay, how do we make this exciting and fun for you?
Yeah.
Or they may have, this is a limit for me, or it's a soft limit. And you work with, okay, help me understand that. What is it about this that makes it a limit for you?
Mm.
And in that, you may find it's cultural programming, in which case now we got to unravel stories and work with each other
Mm.
there. It may be past experiences, in which case now we got to create a safer container for us to experience this. It may be an active turnoff, in which case, okay, maybe this isn't a compatible relationship or not a person that you can explore this with, which is sometimes the reality of it too.
I also feel like it's the scary thing, but I feel like that's always the catastrophizing. It's just like, "Well, I can't bring it to my wife because she's gonna leave me."
Yes.
And when I and it's like, well, maybe that's not true. And maybe you're not giving your wife a lot of credit. And maybe actually for the last 20 years, she's been dropping hints that she knows what's
Mhm.
going down and waiting for you to take up the mantle. But because of your own fear, you haven't actually done her the service of leading this.
Yeah. We are much more likely to like make something extreme in our minds because we're actively repressing this thing, right? And so
Yes.
if we're actively repressing it, we believe that everybody else is the repressor. Like if I come out with
I
this,
love that.
they're not
Yes.
not going to accept it.
Yes.
But what we often find is if we share this, uh, especially if it's somebody that's been married to you, that loves you, that
Has
says I'm committed.
invested heavily in your
Yes,
well-being.
they are probably going to be more understanding than, a general person. And you don't have to go full force with it, right off the bat.
Okay.
With any type of kink, even when you're stepping into kink, I always say like start small. It's kind of like exposure therapy
Mhm.
of like do one small thing and then add on to it. Like the reason for doing that is one, it gets you confident in doing it, but then two, you both get to experience it a little bit and understand what your feelings are around that. So, earlier I was talking about cultural conditioning. A lot of
Yeah.
times, if you start to step into a kink, you hit these like roadblocks for a second. Like, whoa, what is this? I'm not okay with this. And you have to work through that roadblock before you're able to step into it deeper.
Yeah.
The benefit, though, of doing this work is if you go over those roadblocks, there's a deep, profound sense of acceptance for yourself.
Mm.
And there's a deep found amount of pleasure. Like you finally get to experience this thing that you've been repressing. You finally get to show it to another person.
Yeah.
And that can be both very, very validating for yourself and highly erotic, right? We're doing
Yeah.
stuff that's fun and kinky. Uh, so the benefit of stepping into those is that. And so start small, one small thing. What might be wearing just one article of clothing that kind of showcases that.
Yeah.
See how you both enjoy it, experience it.
Yeah.
Then start a little more. See how experience it. Find out how she is um, interacting with this and what she may want out of it, because you guys might, start to take a different direction there. But if you take it step by step, you're able to pivot more quickly.
And I'll also hear of just like get rid of your expectations. Just like
Yes.
take a nice big towel and just like wipe yourself clean so that you can come to the PlayStation with a beginner's mindset.
Mhm.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. I love that. Because if we come, a lot of times we have these like fantasies built up in our
Mm,
heads, right?
the
And then we
fantasies.
then we try and place it on the other person. And when we do that, we don't actually see the other person and how they're experiencing it. Plus, they feel like they're not enough because they're being compared to whatever fantasy you built up in your mind.
I'm really curious your feeling about fantasies. I led this really great masterclass last week called What Makes You Wet. It's to help cross dressers map their pleasure and map their desires and
Mm,
map their and we start with fantasy. Fantasies I feel like are such a beautiful launching off place. And I feel like the majority, I want to say a blanket generalized statement that I have zero data for. And I'm going to say it confidently, so you believe me. The majority of men, I think, get stuck in a purgatory of fantasy that through porn or through whatever that inhibits their capacity for intimacy. What do you gotta say?
mm. I would actually say it's people in general. So,
Mm.
um, my
What do you
firsthand
mean? I want to
experience
blame men. This is about blaming men.
my firsthand experience, especially as I've gotten more well known, is when I go on dates, there's a fantasy that sometimes exists in her head about what kind of Dom I'm going to be and click into her fantasies and not
Mm.
always meeting me with how I'm showing up at that day. And that in reverse will put on those expectations as well.
Yeah.
I think fantasies are, as you said, a wonderful starting place. What I try and lead people to do is dig behind that fantasy. I always say everything that we want in life, there's an emotion, there's a feeling that we are trying to feel.
Yeah.
I don't buy a watch because it's a
Uh,
fun chunk of metal. There's some sort of feeling I get when I wear that watch,
love
right?
that. Love that.
It's the same thing with fantasies. There's a reason it's so erotic to you. There's a reason that you love that. You keep coming back to it. And if you can start to identify the feelings that it evokes in you and then the triggers that trigger those feelings,
Mm.
this is where you can start to explore fantasies in reality. So if I take a fantasy and I feel powerful in that, what trigger things in there are making that feeling of power? It may be her kneeling.
Uh-huh.
When you break it down that way, you can take extreme fantasies. So CNC is a very popular
Do
fantasy.
you want to explain what
And
that
for some
is?
people, uh, consensual non-consent. So this is where people have agreed beforehand that they're going to engage in a way that simulates something that would be non-consensual.
Mhm.
Um,
Also
many
known
people,
as freight plane.
yes, um, many women actually have this fantasy, and they're often uh, very ashamed by it
Yeah.
for obvious reasons.
I'm raising my hand
Um,
over here. I went through that experience.
but if you understand some of the feelings behind it, you can do activities that don't have to reach all the way into that deep part of the fantasy where,
Huh.
maybe you have this fantasy of being tied up in the back of a van and taken somewhere
Uh-huh.
and, engage in this type of thing. That's pretty extreme. And if you engage in that, there's lots of psychological repercussions that you will have to engage and deal with.
Yeah. And when you say extreme, what I hear is just like advanced. It's just
Right.
highly advanced. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's going to take a lot more risk mitigation
Yeah.
and preparation for it. And then
And
the aftercare is going
trust.
to be a lot longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Um, but if you understand the feelings under there, you can pick activities. Maybe you're like, okay, well, we can start with bondage and I can start to get a little bit of that feeling. And maybe we throw in some dirty talk and rough sex.
Yeah.
And so there's some easier places to activate that fantasy.
Yeah.
If we return back to the cross-dressing community, same thing here. What feelings does it evoke for you? What triggers evoke those feelings? Now, how do we start engaging with those triggers or engaging with those feelings in a way that works for both you and your wife.
Yeah.
And now you can actually start exploring it in a way that's beneficial for both of you.
I love that. I love that breakdown. And that's very much like what I have explored of like, how do you want to feel? Start there. Like maybe even just like delay the nylons, delay the pegging, delay, and just go to can you create either sexual or non-sexual scenario with your beloved where you focus on how you want to feel. And then you have to find the vector that overlaps with how they want to feel.
Yes. And this is also a fun activity of like, um, again, being vulnerable, sharing your fantasy a bit, but then hearing theirs. So, like a game I like to play is after you've had sex, because you're sitting in all of those wonderful chemicals,
Mm.
doing pillow talk, do an escalating game of back and forth of like, here's a fantasy or a turn on that I have. What's one that you have? And the reason that you start like, I want to try blindfold, something very tame, is because you build this little bit of trust.
Mm.
You build trust because they're not going to judge you for it. And they're like, oh, I get to be accepted for that. And you kind of just escalate back and forth. What are those fantasies?
Mm.
Um, but when you are able to build those fantasies on one another, like you can start to mix and match them, and it's going to be fun and exciting for them too. So they're going to want to engage in your fantasy as well.
I love that. Yeah, I call that kink paraphrasing.
Mm,
Like one way also is like you put out a fantasy and then they take a quality or a feeling in that fantasy and then they paraphrase it for themselves of like what that would look like for themselves. And
yes,
then you go back
yes.
and forth. How okay, so if my partner is newly outed themselves, newly exposed or newly shared this
Mm,
vulnerability of like, oh, BTW, I'm a crossdresser and have been for a while. Uh, do you want to play with me? What advice do you have for specifically women in finding their way into dominance? And I
mm,
and I'm so curious what your and again, like tips and tricks are welcome because this is like I started off completely submissive and literally taught myself based on desires that I had, but eventually like almost like trained myself to be erotically charged by dominance because at the
mm,
beginning I just wanted to hold power over men because it felt fun and I was doing it
mm,
in dates we and like unconsciously anyway, so I was like let me just try to heal this dynamic, and then over time the eroticism came and now
mm.
it's one of my favorites. So
Yeah. Um,
what are your tips and tricks?
so to me, one of the most dominant actions you can do is basically say, I want this thing, and then basically go after it.
Hmm.
It's basically assertion, right? But I see like assertion as a skill that's needed on both sides. But the way that it's played out is a little different. So the dominant is asserting what they want and going after it. The submissive is asserting themselves so that they are known and their boundaries and limits are respected, but they're going to be following the dominant lead.
Well, can
So
you
that's how the assertion.
explain that a little bit more about how the submissive is assertive?
So if a submissive doesn't assert themselves, they become a people pleaser or doormat,
Right.
right?
And then resentment
Because they
builds, boundaries cross, like it gets distorted and gross. Yeah.
correct. So a submissive has to speak up for their needs, desires, boundaries, and limits.
Mhm.
But it's most important that they're speaking up for those boundaries and limits because the dominant is creating the situation, they're leading it. So it's not very likely that their limits are going to be crossed because they're going to stop things before
Right.
it actually happens.
Right.
The submissive, though, needs to make those known so that the dominant doesn't run over those.
Mm.
So that's where their part in assertion
Got
comes
it.
up.
Love that. Okay, go ahead.
But if you're stepping into dominance, identifying exactly what you want and then being able to come to the other person and say, this is what I want. Would you like to engage this? Is your first step. And the reason I start there is because it completely removes all of the things about what a dominant is supposed to do or what it looks like for it. Because
Mm,
we can think of, oh, I'm supposed to just go in and be bossy and
wear
make
leather
all
and
these commands.
latex.
Right, right. You have this image of what a dominant is. But if you stop and like, what is it I actually want? maybe I want to wear a pink dress and come in and I want them to do this thing.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's what you do. As long as, it's within the other person's limit. You don't have to look like this other dominant and you don't have to do the same actions that they might do. I see this a lot with dominants that aren't necessarily that hardcore disciplinarian
Mhm.
where they have certain rules that must be followed.
Yeah.
Um, for me, for example, I have honorifics, but I don't enforce them. Like I don't require that they be called. It's not a big turn on for
Mm.
me. It reinforces the dynamic, but it's not a requirement
Can
for
you
me.
explain what
For
an
other people,
honorific is?
so an honorific is something like sir or daddy or
Yeah,
master. It's to show a sign of respect to the person that's in
got it.
charge. Um, but there are dominants that like this is you must say these things,
Right.
right? And if you think that you're supposed to do that, you're like, oh, I'm supposed to make my submissive call me these things. When you go in, you're going to be telling them, oh, you have to call me sir, but it's not going to come off authentic. They're not actually going to feel your power. They're not going to
Uh-huh.
feel that dominance from you. But if you come in and you're like, I want you to do this thing that's coming from your own desires, that's when they actually feel that power and dominance.
Hmm. So this is tricky. Then, if the first catalyst to this experience is your husband being like, "I want to dress up as a sissy maid,"
Right.
right? So then,
Right.
because it's like the submissive, it's almost like it sets the dynamic up from topping from the bottom. Do you want to describe
Yes.
what topping from the bottom means?
So, topping from the bottom is basically where the submissive is leading the situation, where you're flipping the roles,
Mhm.
right? Because the dominant's supposed to be leading the
Yeah.
situation. And if the submissive is always like, no, you need to be doing it this way, or we want to move in this direction, it's like, hey, you're not actually surrendering to me and, what we've agreed to.
And
Um,
it can be,
and that,
yeah, it can be really annoying and just
yes.
challenging for both people.
Yes, because the submissive often wants to surrender. The submissive doesn't want to be leading it,
Right.
but they're like, "You're not going in the direction that I want," and so yeah, it just butts heads.
Which is different than just voicing like a yellow or negotiating. It's like it kind of my I mean I'm a reformed topping from the bottom asshole. And I still struggle with it, well, less and less, but it kind of can like seep in.
It's often I call it like a check engine light, actually,
Mm,
um, because again, if it's the way that I see dominance is each person has needs. The dominant is creating a situation where those ideally are both being met,
mm,
right? And they're leading that situation. If the person is topping from the bottom, their needs are not being met in whatever direction that
right.
that scene is going or that relationship is going. So some are going to just directly speak up about that, like, hey, this isn't working. Others are going to do it in these backhanded ways where they might try and control the situation.
Great. Love that.
So I see it as a check engine light, not something to get angry at, but something to, okay, let's sit down. What's
What's
going
going
on
on?
here?
That's the best response a dominant can have if they recognize that the submissive is topping from the bottom. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so good.
But going back to your original question about, okay, this crossdresser has come and said, hey, I want you to be in the dominant
Yeah,
role. I want to experience this. She's going to have to find what she enjoys about doing that. She's going to have to find her own desires for this situation or bring in her desires. And how do we mix these two?
yeah.
Um, and I mean this even to the like microscopic, you're doing certain actions. So I'm going to return back to myself. If someone's giving me a blowjob,
Uh,
I can be enduring that blowjob or I can be deeply enjoying it. And the difference is I'm actively putting in, what I want out of that blowjob. It may be her
what's the first option? You can be
in, enduring it.
enduring. Okay,
Yes. Yes. Because if
that
somebody's
sounds terrible.
exactly, but if somebody's doing something like in a motion that doesn't feel that good or
Right.
doing it in a way that doesn't, and you don't speak up, you don't say, this is what I want,
Yeah.
you're going to be enduring that situation.
Yes.
So for her, as she's engaging in this cross dressing fantasy, she has to speak up for what she wants in that,
Yeah.
what things she wants. Otherwise, she's going to endure it. She's going to hate it and she's never going to want to do it again.
I love that. Yeah. Enduring. Let's all make a pinky swear that we will never endure in an intimate situation ever, ever, ever. Pinky swear, great. Spit, cool. Yeah, I hate enduring. And the other thing is like enduring, you have to be so like I have found that I have to be hyper vigilant when it comes to
Mm,
enduring.
yes.
I mean, and because you have to train yourself, because we all, especially in intimate situations, have done lots of enduring. I mean, that's how we
Yes.
begin exploring this is we endure things and then we like, I didn't like that, I did like this. But then whether we have the capacity or the ability to use our voice and eh, like describe our feelings is a whole nother layer on top of that. So you really have to be, it's not like, oh, I'm a people pleaser, I endure, or it's like, no, no, no. Even I, a skilled professional in this realm and who've taken every workshop in the world on this, I still catch myself enduring.
Yes. And
Sneaky.
the reasons for enduring are like different because I will admit I endure sometimes too. And it's often like, oh, I don't want this person to seem like they're not enough or they're not doing well. Right. That's the side that comes
Yeah.
from me. But for a woman who maybe has been submissive and then stepping into that dominant role, they're going to have all this conditioning for however long you've
Yeah.
been in that relationship in this role. And now you're trying to step in the dominant position. You're probably going to start enduring things like, I'm engaging with this. It looks like they're enjoying it. I'm enduring this because you're kind of falling back into that position. You will have to take that active awareness and that active will to start, hey, this is what I actually want. Do this thing.
It makes me think. I'm just curious about ways for women to ease into exploring with their cross-dressing partner. And I want to see what you think about this. In which case, the it reminds me of. I'm gonna just give a case example of me and my partner. It reminds me of my partner wanted to he sometimes helps me on my business because he's a big businessman or whatever. So, and he's deeply passionate about this work too. He enjoys it. And so he was just regularly helping me. And then eventually he was just like, you know what? Like, or one of us brought up was like, why don't we actually do this in dynamic? Because I'm kind of
Mm.
bossing you around anyway. So then we started doing mistress and helper. But one of the things that I realized is that when I'm in my workday, at first I was like, I have to dom him. I started feeling burdened. And I was like, I don't
Mm,
want to have to, I just want to get my shit done. I just want you to help me. And so so then that's why I began. I was like, okay, that's why I named him Helper.
mhm.
Your job is to do nothing but help me. You are here to serve me, and I'm just going to tell you what to do. So then we started playing on that, and where now, like at the beginning when I started working with him in this way, and it was going to be non-sexual at all, because I was like, I don't want to have to get around. Like, I don't know, I don't want to have to do all these things in the middle of my day when I'm trying to get stuff done. I just want you to help me. So we started like where he got on his knees and I was just like, I am the dominant, you're the helper. Your job is to serve me. Your job is to ensure that I'm grounded. Your job is to ensure that all my needs are met. Your job is to add to my life purely.
Mm,
My job is to not be burdened by you. My job is to not go out of my way in any way, shape, or form
yes.
to take care of you. And I had to say that for myself so that I could release any obligation I was feeling and basically talk to the constriction in my stomach that was just like, "Oh, I don't wanna."
Mm,
And then by doing that, it was an amazing experience. And now we
mhm.
do it, like, literally regularly, like, once a week, and now it's become very erotic, and it's just grown in all kinds of ways, but it's just been so helpful. And I'm just wondering about for a wife who's a crossdresser, maybe you start with you make your partner like maybe like you are my self-care bitch for the evening. Your job is I want a foot massage. I want
Mm.
a back massage. I want you to pour me a glass of wine. I want you to order dinner. But it's just like j- purely things that would make you happy and nothing else.
Yeah. So, what's important here to remember? So, I remember talked about earlier. Both partners have needs, desires, boundaries, and limits. Right.
Mm.
Right. What you're talking about right now is you had a limit for how many needs you're willing to meet of that other person. You
Mhm.
don't want them to be a burden.
Mhm.
Doms have limits too,
Yeah.
and we need to make sure that we remember those so that we can give with joy. We can give enthusiastically when we are meeting that other person's needs.
Mhm.
Um,
But
Whenever I'm setting up a dynamic, I like to think about what's going to make my life easier, be beneficial to me. What sort
mm,
of things would I want them doing? Now we're talking about my needs and desires, right? B, what's going to be beneficial for them? How do they want to grow? What do they need? And then C, what makes the dynamic work better, it just functions more smoothly.
oh,
And those might be different communication protocols or ways to check in with one another, things like that. Um, when you're addressing A, what is most beneficial to me, you're coming to your partner and saying, I would like all of these things. Would you be willing to do those?
uh-huh,
And they are going to agree or not agree.
uh-huh,
Then the other one's going to be what is beneficial for them. They're going to come to you. I would like all of these things. Would you be willing to do? And some of those you can say no to because it's going to fall out of your limit. If there's something that you're going to engage in and you're going to endure it, you're going to build resentment for, you don't do it
uh-huh,
because it's going to feel shitty for that other person.
uh-huh,
Even if you like starting to do it for them, it's not going to land the same way that they want it to feel.
uh-huh,
And remember, we're searching for feelings in this.
uh-huh.
How, when we engage in this, we want to feel a certain way. If you're enduring something, it's not going to feel like they want it to feel.
Yeah. Love that. I love that. And so what would a okay, so that's my first question of like, yeah, so like for the women, think about like what would you actually want? And it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
sexual.
There's a book called Real Service. It focuses on if
Hmm.
you're building a 24/7 dynamic, which isn't what people are going to be doing, right off the bat, but it helps. There's some descriptions of what service looks like in there.
Oh, cool.
And I like it because it shows two opposite sides. One's the micromanager who is like actively engaged in directing everything, has to put in a lot of energy for their submissives. The other side, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically being like a handler. So somebody that basically helps a celebrity or a book author when they're going on a trip, and they handle everything. They're like, I know your calendar. I'm getting you your food. I'm drawing your bath if you want.
Huh.
There's that form of service as well, and you can see that's a lot more energy of the submissive towards the dominant than it
Yeah.
is the dominant towards the submissive.
That's
So
interesting.
find out the flow that you guys want.
Yeah.
Um, Neither one is right or wrong. It's what works for you guys.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. And that's the thing. Again, like wipe the expectations clean of what this is supposed to look like. The other thing I am curious about, um, and I just want to go back to cross dressers. When you come to your lady and you're talking about this, like you have to help her understand how this will benefit her life. A
Yes.
lot
Yes.
of times cross-dressers come because this is super scary and, like, really vulnerable, and maybe they have or have not done their work to make peace with their shame. They come as, like, "Can you hold this trauma for me?" And
Yeah.
also, "Do you wanna have sex?" Right? Instead of just like, I would love to serve you," or
Hmm.
I would love to have this benefit your life in some way
Yes.
and to grow together is I just think is a big thing. Okay, so my other question is what do you think about if a what do you think about one way I think some women have come into this realm is to first um is to first acclimate themselves to
Mm.
having their partner um being the feminine. And so what about the way, because I'm going back and forth. I want to know because I feel ambivalent about it. Just like, oh, is it of like, okay, what if their partner gets dressed up and it's just like you just have a girls' night and like
Hmm.
they're your best girlfriend. So you don't have to be anything but who you are and you meet them as like as a stranger who is like because honestly your partner you have to re-meet your 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 partner
Yes.
in as their feminine because it's going to be very
Yes.
drastically different than their masculine. The pros I see is, like, that could be a way to acclimate and and that could be a way to find resonance with each other and
Hmm.
find pleasure, and again, as a way to benefit the wife of just, like, we get to, like, let's do makeup together, let's go get a spa together, let's go shopping together, it's like could be your best friend. On the other hand, I'm wondering, does that then hurt any chances of actually creating polarity?
This is a great question. So I'm speculating because I've never.
Perfect. Just say it confidently and everyone will believe you.
Yeah. um, but what you say there will be resonance and familiarity, right? And I'm not sure if that's going to port over into an erotic context where you have that polarity.
Huh.
That said, it doesn't mean that you can't do both. And that's basically what we do in long term relationships. We
Mm.
create familiarity and resonance with one another so that we're able to collaborate. But if we're going to keep things hot and spicy in the bedroom, you also have to balance that with polarity. And
Mhm.
that's an ongoing thing in a relationship.
Mhm.
So I
Which,
don't see why.
weirdly enough, most people don't practice. Like, don't realize that this is a skill set. It is
Yes.
like your
Yep.
polarity with your partner is like it's like raising a child. Like you actually have to foster it and nurture and grow and learn. Like otherwise, don't. Why are you surprised that you haven't had sex in 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah, the common thing is, like, in the beginning, you love all of the differences. Like,
Right.
"These are amazing. This is great. I love this." And then you get so familiar with those differences that now they become
Yeah.
resentments, right? And you're like, "These suck." And now you're also very familiar. The high-powered dominant person that you've seen in the beginning, you also see them at their lowest when they're sick
Yeah.
or, just being around the house on a Sunday, being a slob,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. You're like, "You're not the same," but they are.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is learn to accept all facets of that
I love
person.
that.
But as we're doing that, you also have to cultivate that difference. You have to cultivate that polarity and sometimes step into things that allow those to show up more naturally. So that's one of the reasons that people explore dominance and submission sometimes because, like, hey, we're actively going to say we're stepping into these different poles here. And maybe we're not that way, in our relationship day to day. But because we're doing that, we get to experience these other facets of each other that we don't normally get to see. Um, so I think, in a cross dressing relationship, there would be benefit to begin accepting it so it doesn't seem so foreign.
Yeah.
But then I would leave room to, like, okay, now how do we cultivate the polarity of this? How can I, as the woman, step into some of my masculine, maybe?
Mhm.
And that can be a way for her to experience something new about herself.
Yeah.
Um, when we explore any of this stuff in kink, we're often putting on different personas and we are experiencing ourselves and our partners in new way and that can be exciting. It's like going dating again for the first time,
Yes.
right? So lean into that excitement as well.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of one of my teachers, Justin Patrick Pierce and London Angel Winters. Have you studied with them? I think
I have
yeah,
not known.
they're great. But they, at one of their workshops, and I'm sure they stole this from somebody else, but they brought up a PowerPoint screen, and it was of a square with a bunch of different colored dots within it. And they're like,
I just read their book.
oh
Now I know who
yeah,
you're talking. I
yeah,
literally just read their book. I was like, no, I've not worked with it. The name sounds familiar. Yes,
yes.
they have a fantastic model of polarity.
So good, right? It really helped me. The book say Playing with Fire. Yeah,
Yes.
Playing
Yep.
with Fire. Um, But so yeah, so they have this image, this square with a bunch of different colored dots in it, and then they're like, so in the beginning, you and they're like black dots and pink dots, and in the beginning, you there's a whole person in front of you, but in the beginning, you mostly see they're like favorable dots, you know what I mean? And so like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like there's the black dots go away, and it's just like, oh, it's this full person, and then you see like the things that you really loved about them. But then over time, and all of a sudden they click and like all the red dots go away. And then all of a sudden all of the yellow dots go away. And then over time, all of a sudden that's left is only the black dots. You know what I mean? And you start to see this person as only black dots. When
Mm.
in reality, they're not black dots and they're not just pink dots. They are a kaleidoscope of things. And
Yes.
our job then is to, and then they click a button and the pink dots come back and the red dots come back. It is to allow the full person in front of you, regardless of what they're experiencing, so it's like the pedestal sucks and the sewer sucks. There's also why you
Mhm.
don't, I'm a huge advocate, like, don't ever put your partner on a pedestal. Like, you are
Yeah.
hurting both of you. It just decreases any opportunity for real, profound partnership and intimacy. But I love this scenario so much because my partner and I are very, very, very good at seeing the whole picture of each other. Um, but every once in a while, it's so helpful to be like, "Oh shit, I'm black dotting you." You know what I mean? And him being like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you're black dotting me." And then like, and vice versa. It's just such a thing. I'm just like, "Oh, that's just put some more colors in there and you'll get the fullness of who I am." And it's just so
Yeah.
helpful to understand
Yeah.
that.
You also see, like, when you're doing it to your partner, you're also black dotting yourself or painting yourself into a
Mm,
box, right? Because
yes.
you're like, this is the only person I want to see, and there's nothing else of you that exists. And
Yeah.
that means this is the only way that I'm functioning with you.
Yeah.
But there's actually an array of ways that you can function with your partner
Ugh,
and, interact. And if you stop putting them in a box, you allow yourself to visit that array as
I
well.
love that so much. It's also because when you're black dotting somebody, you're like what you just beautifully said, you're hurting yourself. Because like you are then shaving down your capacity for compassion, for empathy, for
Yeah.
creativity, for joy, for happiness. Like you are ultimately black. Yeah, I love how you said that. You're black dotting yourself.
And this is, I mean, we're talking about a spiritual principle here because, if you allowed your partner to be however they wanted to express
Yeah.
themselves, you're going to experience new ways of relating with them. You're going to experience new emotions. You're going to have new experiences in general.
Yeah.
And we tend to place judgment on those, especially if they don't align with whatever else we've been told that should be the way things are.
Mhm.
Uh, but the reality of life is we have this full spectrum of experience, full spectrum
Yes.
of emotions, and you start cutting off other ones, you're going to cut off the ones that you want to experience as well.
Hmm.
And the spiritual principle is finding the joy, the contentment in each of those experiences,
Hmm.
that each one can be fully felt as a part of life and be okay.
Hmm.
So you see that in your partner, you'll begin to see it in yourself too.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Also, I know we don't have time for this, but I'm gonna drop it anyway. It's just like also another ploy for non-monogamy
Mm.
of like allowing. I mean, this is about to be a whole nother podcast. So I'm just gonna like plop this and walk away. Which is like allowing your partner to be a full sexual human, whether or not that sexuality is pointed towards you. That's
Yes.
my partner and I, yeah, the foundation of our relationship from day one, we agreed upon was to be each other's, like, biggest cheerleader for each other's highest purpose and self. Whether that
Mm.
looks like we are together or whether we're not together. Whether that looks like
Mm.
we are enjoying a night out with somebody else or we're not enjoying, we're cuddling on the couch, whatever. But, like, if when we have that as our North Star, then, like, you not only do you get to love somebody so fully, and recognize that, like, and in doing so, loving someone so fully, like, garnering that same love back. So it's a
Mhm.
constantly nourishing cycle, and then also, you always have someone in your team that's, like, authentically on your team, which I feel like a lot of, especially long-term partners, forget how to do.
There's this image from a Buddhist story where if you are looking at a flower and you try and keep that flower the same, because it's always changing.
Mm,
If you look at that flower and you grasp onto it, you're going to kill everything about it that you found beauty in. But if
mm,
you let the flower be, you can sit, admire, and enjoy that beauty. And what I find in long term relationships is we fall in love with certain aspects. We don't accept the full thing. And
uh-huh.
so we try and grasp on to that
Yes.
relationship. And unfortunately, a lot of times we do it in the name of monogamy, using that as uh, the thing that we should be doing, when rather it's actually this fear of uncertainty or this fear of change. Or what if you
Yes.
become a person that maybe I can't accept yet? And you're
Yeah.
going to have to mess with those dark things in yourself, some self reflection there.
Yeah.
So we grasp onto that and we end up killing the relationship. We end up killing what we found so beautiful in that other person.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. That I love that so much. That's like I um I was working with a client recently, and he's older. He's an older adult, and um he talked about, he tried to come out to his wife, and his wife was just like, this is not, you're not, that's not what I signed up for. That's not the person
Mhm.
I married as a as a cross dresser. Which on one hand I'm like, that's actually kind of legit, because this person's been lying to you for like 20 years and like only waited like 7 years after you're married to come out with their true desires that they've been acting on in one way, shape, or form. So, like, that's legit. You didn't get the opportunity to consent to. And also, like, yo, you're in your 70s. Of course, you're not. This is not the man you married. Like, come
Yes.
on now.
Yeah, that's also my bias against marriage as well.
Mm,
Is we make this promise that we're going to love this person uh, for eternity, that they're going to be the
till
same. But the
death do
reality
us
is,
part.
yeah, but you can't actually make a promise for someone you don't know
Yeah,
exists, in the future. You don't know what values and personality and everything else exists in that future.
yeah.
I like the word commitment better, and commitment to me is basically at any given moment, you can look at the other partner
Uh,
and say, "Yes, I want to be in this relationship."
yeah.
It's based on consent at any moment, right?
Mhm.
Like, I want to be in this relationship, and if that changes, then we address it. We have to look at why is that? Can we work this out? If not, then you have to let them go.
Mhm.
That's the otherwise it's just holding somebody. It becomes an obligation. Then you get resentment and everything else, all the toxicity that we don't
I
want.
love that. There's 2 things, which is it reminds me of, there's a couples therapy therapist that I worked with, my partner and I worked with, and her partner, this is Ari and Jamin for whoever knows these folks, they get married every year. They have a
Mm,
ceremony every single year, because every year they take stock of, like, do we still choose each other? And if
yeah.
we still choose each other, we're gonna celebrate that. And there might be a day where they say, "You know what? I think I'm good." And that is fully in the realm of possibility that they accept every single day. Also, and which, for when I heard that, I was like, "That is so romantic," because they, like, get a professional photographer each year, and even if it's just the 2
Amazing.
of them, do you know what I mean? They, like,
Yeah.
dress up and, like, get photos and, like, do a fancy thing or do a trip. And they have kids, and that was just so, I was like, "Yes, yes, yes, please."
I love that, because it shows the active work that you have to do in a relationship
Yeah.
to do these recommitments, right? We talked about earlier the active work that you have to do for polarity. This isn't something that, okay, we got together and now it's just gonna work. Not how it works at all. Like, you have to actively be making these roles or actively recommitting. I always say to my partner, what I'm committed to is actively doing the work with you all the time, whatever that looks like. So I can meet the, I think she always states this study that says, over the course of your relationship, you'll change into like 7 different people.
Uh,
So she's like, I actively commit to like meeting your 7 different people
uh-huh,
and being able to work with that.
uh-huh.
To me, that's, commitment. Both people showing up, no matter the context, being able to engage with one another.
I love that. Yeah, I love that so much. And I've remembered what I was going to say, which is uh, there's also, I think, a part of the non-monogamy or part of monogamy. And this, again, I'm super biased because also I know lots of beautiful monogamous couples and celebrate
Yep.
them and, all this different stuff. So, and really respect those relationships and they're inspiring leaders in my community and friends. But there's also the fear of death. I think a lot of
Mm.
this is, like, the fear of death, of, like, of the
Yes.
need for permanency, and I think that
Yes.
comes with our culture, and one of the things that I've really wrestled with a lot, which is my partner is 22 years older than I am. This
Mm.
mofo is about to turn 60 years old this year. I am not sick. I am 37 years old. So we are hella like we should have an Instagram just for our age gap because those Instagrams do
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
well. um and I love this mofo so much. Like every day I am like in awe of who I get to spend my life with. And he is going to die. If all goes well, he is going to
Right.
die at least 22 years around, like, I'll have a good 2 decades of my life where I'm going to be mourning him, and that's, like, if
Yeah.
everything goes perfectly. And, when I decided to, like, truly commit to him, I was like, "I am committed to this grieving. I am
Mm.
committed to, like,
Yes.
on my knee." Oop, I'm, whenever I talk about it conceptually, it's like such an important concept, and it's like so I'm committed to feeling the heartbreak of losing this man.
Mm.
And I'm committed to being there when he's 90, or at least
Mm.
I'm committed to the idea of being there when he's 90, because I don't know what's gonna happen. But like what is the point of falling in love if you're not also falling in love with heartbreak, which can be just as profound, beautiful, and a wise teacher.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, I think, we brought up the monogamous people too. In each one of these situations, they look different. There's the non-monogamy, there's your situation with an older person,
Mhm.
there's these people in the cross-dressing community, there's the monogamous people. In each one of those situations, both people ideally are coming forward and saying, this is going to be the reality of our relationship. They're like fully informed.
Yeah.
You were just expressing at some point, you have 2 decades where you'll still be living and he has
Yeah.
passed. And you're like, this relationship still means so much to me that I want to
Yeah.
engage with that. I commit to having that heartbreak. For somebody in the cross-dressing community, like, we're going to have some challenges with you engaging in that feminine identity.
Mhm.
We still have to function in the world. You might have kids.
Yeah.
You have to navigate how much this comes out. But hearing, I commit to you and engaging with this and making space for it,
Mhm.
even though it'll be challenging. For the monogamous couple, it's often we are fully committed to each other. We're not engaging in other relationships. That's going to be a challenge. And what unfortunately happens is a lot of people just do it by default and they don't recognize those things are going to be challenges unless they've actively accepted it, actively said, yes, I want to engage with that.
Yeah.
They're going to have a whole lot of problems down the
And then it
road.
becomes
But if both,
enduring. Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But if both people say, uh, I understand these problems are going to come and I commit to them.
Mhm.
That's when it's going to work.
Mm.
That's when you actually have the beautiful monogamous relationship that's in, the fairy tale.
That's so good. And I'm gonna actually start. I honestly could talk to you for another 3 hours. So we're just gonna make one 3 hour podcast. But for the sake of brevity, I am going to start closing this beautiful portal of intellectual goodness down. So I want to ask you 2 questions before we leave, which is like, what do you think? Give If you could give crossdressers one biggest piece of advice? And maybe it and actually let's make it about specifically about cross dressers of just like how to how to really authentically deepen their um this this joy in their life. What like
Mm.
what would you say?
Acceptance is where you're going to have to start.
Mm.
And the physical step for that might look different for each person. It might be engaging with it on your own, and maybe you've never done that. Um, I know that some have engaged a long time on their own. So that next step for you might be bringing it to your partner,
Mm.
or it might be engaging with community of others
Mm.
that also do this. So you're not doing it in isolation. Whatever that little bit of edge for you is that you can take another step towards acceptance is where I would start.
I love that, and actually you just teed me up so beautifully to do a very shameless plug for I'm launching this community actually specifically for this
Mm,
reason. It's called Outrageously
amazing.
Her. And actually I'm moving away. It's going to be primarily an online cohort. It's a cohort where we take 20 cross-dressers from around the world, whoever, there's an application process, and we come together every 2 weeks for like an hour and a half, and we truly sit with each other and really understand and grow like and
Mm,
a sisterhood, because that's the thing in my
yeah.
own life, like how sisterhood has been so profound. I mean, with
Mm,
the females in my life, of
yeah.
deepening and growing and challenging me and accepting me, and most men, unfortunately, whether they're cross dressers or not, do not have this experience even with other men in their life.
Yeah. I had to actively make a men's group for myself. I did it for about 7.5 years. And it was just me collecting men that I saw
Yeah.
values that I enjoyed in or like wanted around me. And we ended up making a group of about 8 people. It fluxed over the years, but there's nowhere I could go to like start making. I had to build
You
it
have to
myself.
build it, and so I wanna build this for cross-dressers because it is so clearly needed, having this deep, intimate experiences. So we meet as a group, and then on the other, they're assigned sister pods. So then, like, 3 of them that you'll do have the same
Amazing.
3, like, accountability buddies throughout it's a 4-month thing. So shameless plug, anyone out there who's just like, "I need this," it's gonna be online only. I'm pretty sure that I was gonna do an in-person retreat, but that might be too much because a lot of people are coming from the UK, but, um
Mm,
and even if it's not originally her, like, you hack friends, please, just anyone, get a community, just talk to somebody authentically. It's
yes.
so important.
Gives you a lot of permission. So I run some munches in my local
Oh, yeah.
community. And one of the thing that you recognize with munches is we do this
Wait, what's a
question
munch?
game. One
Tell me what's a munch.
So a munch is a kinky meetup. Think like, a business networking event, except you're not going to talk about business and economics. You're going to talk about kinky stuff.
It's the
So you could be
best.
talking about, yeah, you could be talking about a board game and then be like, oh, I also got this paddle and I tried it out
Yeah.
yesterday. So it's just fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but what you see is somebody else like start to talk about this thing they're into, like, oh yeah, I tied somebody up and I started spanking them, and you're like, uh, you're like a nurse and a great mother and everything else, and you do this really kinky, outrageous shit. Maybe it's okay that I also do this
Yeah,
kinky, outrageous shit, and I'm not a bad person for doing
yeah.
it.
Well played. Yeah, perfect. That's exactly it. So if you're not gonna apply to my cohort, which you should, find yourself a munch. Find yourself like go on FetLife, go on meetup.com, like go anywhere. Craigslist for Christ's sakes, but be careful with that. And just find people because they are there. I don't care where you live, they are there. Anywhere. So then my last question for you, Brandon the Dom, is where can people find your amazing content that is just so educational?
Yeah, everything can be found at brandonthedom.com, and then you can follow links elsewhere. As Emily mentioned, I also have a large YouTube that has tons of educational videos that I dive into very deeply with different topics. So those are the best two locations to
Oh,
find me.
amazing. And then also, are there any shameless plugs that you want to shamelessly plug? Then let's say you up
Mm,
for a real good kinky joke there.
yeah. um, No, I don't think so. I enjoy people finding my educational content first and being able to change their lives from that. And if
Mm,
they decide, you know what, I need a little bit of help or accountability, then you can look at some of my courses or my coaching. But first and foremost, I just want you to be able to change your life with whatever resource works for you.
wow, well done. That was a perfect pinch. Good job. That was a perfect plug. All right. Well, that is the end of this episode of Soul Kink Therapy. Thank you so much for going on this amazing journey with us, and so many blessings to you and your family and your community as you begin to explore the depths of your freaky nature. Bye bye, all.